It's not TV, it's HBO.
It's not TV, it's HBO.
Hope, positivity, and optimism.
Hope, positivity, and optimism.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous. Mwah.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous. Me, Tom Arnold, I am very famous. I absolutely like, because it's very true. Like, I hadn't freaking heard of you until I was sitting on a Friday night. This is how bad my life is. Listen, fucker, good luck. Good luck with your rebranding. Like anybody knew what the name was before. What was the name? Okay, who gives a shit? That's a good name because it's got your name in it. You can pretend you're humble. You say, I'm not famous. And, which you aren't. So you're just not being anyway, but I hope you get famous doing this. Good luck to you.
Am I being overconfident? Am I becoming complacent about complacency?
I think you are.
Oh, he's not the Messiah, he's just a very naughty boy.
Yeah, I've got big ears.
Brian just wanted to see anyone else. Piss off!
That's the one, because you literally complete me, and we complete each other.
You've obviously encountered discrimination in your own life by virtue of being Australian.
Hey, Manuel Camp was a real pissant who was very rarely stable.
I don't want to get too gushy, but I might just be saying you complete me, Dean. PNG now stands for Pritchard and Good.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane!
Did I do that?
You're insane!
Look, it's not the summer of George, it's the summer of Joe. Or maybe it's the summer of George Tannenbaum. More on that a little bit later. You are watching this episode sometime well, actually, you could be watching it in any season, but I don't know, we're several weeks after Cannes, or maybe I should say Can't in my South African accent. We're talking marketing, we're talking advertising, we're talking bonfire of the vanities. We're talking about whatever the hell Peter Levitan wants to talk about today. He is my very famous guest. You can see, you got an ad man or an ad person on when they give you the side black and white profile and they're wearing black rimmed glasses. So he's a serious man, as you will see shortly. And I cannot wait to have the conversation. I'm feeling very perky today. And maybe one of the reasons is I actually haven't pre-recorded in a while, and so I always say that when you didn't travel for a while, I don't know, because of this weird thing that happened to us for about 2 years, but I digress. You end up going on your first business trip, getting into a hotel room and realizing you have no socks or underwear, so you get a little rusty. Well, it's important for us to make sure that we continue to work those muscles, those thought leadership muscles, and we will be talking about thought leadership today. Now, if you like the show, if you love the show, if you despise the show, as long as you have an opinion of the show, please consider subscribing to my channel, bit.ly/subscribe to the show on the YouTube, so you never miss a single episode, and there have been about 500 of them. Also, because I don't do enough, I need to do more in discord.gg/Alpha Collective, Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do a virtual coffee. The Collective Cafe is a home, a virtual coffee home, where we manifest, we discuss, we debate, we talk about wellness, we talk about diversity, we do live book reads, We even have open mic sessions, AMAs, office hours, etc. And if you don't like the idea of attending live, we also have a podcast version called the Collective Cafe to go, bit.ly/Collective Cafe to go. And we would love to have you join us Monday through Friday. But now, it is time for the seated soliloquy, which today is called No Cans Do. Is it no cans or do or no can do regardless? I wanted to talk a little bit about Cannes. Now, many people have said to me, Joe, you're not at Cannes this year? And my response is, I've never been to Cannes. I've never been to the what they call it, the Creativity Festival, the Advertising Festival, mainly because no one has ever invited me. But really, it's because I guess I'm on the top 10 most wanted list, dead or alive, in Cannes, anywhere near the Advertising Festival. Having written a book called Life After the 30-Second Spot, I did go once to Cannes. I went to, I think it was MIPCon. It was a video conference. It was interesting. I think the founder of Linden Labs, the home of Second Life, was there. I was looking forward to meeting him, and then my wife called and said, you need to get back home. I think I'm going into labor, to which I responded, who is he? I'll kill him. No, just kidding. But I flew back, and that was my trip to Cannes, very short-lived. Now, I've spent the last few days looking at everyone's photographs, posts on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, partying at the iHeartRadio party with Lizzo, dropping all that rosé and name dropping, etc. And I got to tell you, I just felt a little bit of contempt mixed with jealousy. I got to be honest. Of course, I'm jealous. I mean, if I'm not jealous, the only thing worse than than being there would be not being there. But at the same time, it felt to me a little indulgent. It felt to me almost like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Maybe not the best analogy these days, but still, that's what it felt like. My producer just said to me, Joe, not the best analogy these days, but it is what it is. Almost the sense of denial, this idea of the last hurrah as well happening without being oblivious to the changing world. So I don't know. I guess I wish I could have been there, but at the same time, I'm glad I wasn't there. It's time to get back to work. It's time to figure out how to save advertising, how to save marketing, how to save the corporation, how to save business in this insanely crazy world. And I suppose the best person to offer us a perspective, especially leading the charge in terms of maybe how the agencies, the advertising agencies, the communications agencies are structuring, positioning, growing themselves, trying to cater to the changing world, is Mr. Peter Levitan. Now, I am just going to change the rules slightly because he gave me a 24-second bio. And of course, I went to Chat GPT and I said to Chat, we're on first name basis these days, can you do Peter Levitan's bio, but spoken in the voice, in the tone, in the mannerisms of David Ogilvy himself from the grave? And so in my worst possible Ogilvy accent, here goes. Ladies and gentlemen, permit me to whisk you away into the grand tapestry of a man who epitomizes the very quintessence of advertising and innovation, Mr. Peter Levitan. Picture, if you will, a dashing young commercial photographer capturing the zeitgeist of San Francisco through his lens. Our protagonist then takes a transatlantic leap to grace the hallowed halls of Saatchi & Saatchi in both London and New York as the Executive Vice President, General Manager, and Global Business Development Director, a maestro in the art of advertising. Peter adds another feather to his cap as the owner of an advertising agency in the lush green utopia of Portland, Oregon. But wait, my friends, the plot thickens. Peter, a man whose curiosity knows no bounds, dives headfirst into the digital frontier. He establishes not one, but two revolutionary internet companies. His crown jewel, Active Buddy, and its brainchild, Smarter Child, an intelligent bot that paved the way for the likes of Siri and AI. A prescient masterstroke so brilliant that even the titans at Microsoft couldn't resist acquiring it. Now, one might surmise that such a man, having scaled these lofty heights, would rest on his laurels, but not Peter Levitan. He is a relentless force in pursuit of excellence. He now helms a global consultancy, a modern-day Midas, turning advertising agencies into veritable gold mines. And my dear audience, he is also a wordsmith, the author of 4 illustrious tomes, with 2 more waiting in the wings to serenade the world with his wisdom. Born amidst the cacophony and splendor of New York, Peter now finds solace in the picturesque cobblestone streets of San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. So raise your glasses high, for Peter Levitan is not just a man, he is an odyssey. In the realm of advertising and beyond, he is a titan amongst mortals. Welcome to the show, Peter Levitan.
Well, I have really nothing left to say. Thank you very much.
Well, thank David. I was just doing a bad accent. That literally was a prompt, taking your bio and saying, you know, give me a little bit of Ogilvy. And as you know, there are now plenty of AI tools that will, I don't know if they have the voice of David Ogilvy, but I could have probably introduced you in the voice of Snoop. It's kind of crazy. But anyway.
As in the dog.
As in the dog, the D-O-double, as in D-O-double-G. So, Peter, we will stay on the ridiculous before we get back to the sublime, because people want to know about you. I mean, I don't know why people would want to know more about you than that bio. No, I'm saying, I'm not being deprecating. I'm saying that bio is pretty damn impressive. I remember the company well. And it's a real honor and a pleasure to talk to you. But we're still going to do a little bit more digging. And we have a little segment that we call Fun Facts, where we discover fun facts about our guests. And so the first thing we found out about you is that you were on the show To Tell the Truth when you were in high school. I don't think it was this cast and crew. You won all of the votes, and it was about LSD. So tell us that story.
Well, I will just sort of start at the beginning of the end. I fortunately or unfortunately went to Puerto Vallarta when I was in high school, as I went as a friend of the only child. So I was brought along with that family. And I don't know how many people remember the actor Lee Marvin, who has won Academy Awards. Anyway, Lee's long gone. We met his son. His son introduced us to the drug world of Mexico, which was quite interesting in high school. I came back to New York and accidentally was asked by the TV show To Tell the Truth, which was one real person and 2-3 fake people who tried to stump the audience and the panel. And I was to fake the person that had given LSD to spiders. And we're talking a long time ago, and won the National Science Award for giving LSD to spiders. So I went to the library. Some of us remember a library. It's a big place with lots of books and magazines and newspapers. And I studied Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert. Richard Alpert became Ram Dass, a spiritual leader. I learned everything about LSD from these Harvard professors. And now I was a bit glibber, I will admit, than the scientist kid. and won all the votes. And unfortunately, that particular incident, where I learned more about LSD than any other human in the United States, other than maybe Leary, caused me to kind of lose it for a couple of years. But I recovered. So that the good news is I recovered. The other part of good news is if you do your research, anyone can be an expert about anything.
Well, that is true. You just have to go to LinkedIn and see how many business coaches there are, how many Web3 ninjas there are, how many social media mavens there are, and quite frankly, how many experts in advertising there are. And we will get to that soon. Now, when you told me to describe you as author, business coach, speaker, again, and writer, is that because of the LSD, that you forgot that you were once a speaker? And now it's all coming back to you?
Well, I don't know how deep we can go in this show, but microdosing is now quite popular. It started in Silicon Valley and has moved out around the country. I tried it recently with mushrooms. I mean, am I getting too personal here? Thinking that this is supposed to make my brain freer, lighter, smarter, make me better looking, younger, the whole thing. It didn't, so I've given up on that. But it is intriguing if you were to Google microdosing, how prevalent it is, certainly given the number of states where you can actually buy it legally, which is insane. But an interesting thing, I recommend to most advertising agency leaders that they dose themselves a bit.
I actually had Brian Murarescu on the show, and he wrote a book called The Immortality Key. And it's literally years and years of research and work where he has traced psilocybin and other ingredients to both the origins of Stoic philosophy and philosophers, and even to the early days of religion, where potentially when we talk about wine and wafers, that and people seeing God, that allegedly, or that there is evidence that perhaps they might have actually been seeing God in a spiritual way due to some hallucinogenics. It's very interesting, and you should definitely get a copy of the book, or I'll send you a link to the article. But yeah, I'm fascinated. Peter, I mean, the thing is, we're going to talk about creativity. We're going to talk about, I call it the stupid bowl, right? Every year we have another shot to basically knock it out the park, to change a business, change a life, change a business model, an industry in front of 110 million sets of eyeballs. And it just seems like the bar keeps on going lower and lower and lower. And I wonder, with all the talent, with all the genius, with all the creativity that is flowing through our veins and all the people in the industry, why we just can't seem to recreate that 1984 type of commercial, hence the stupid bowl. So microdose away, baby.
Thank you. Let me have a little right now. Cheers.
Cheers. I mean, I'm offended that you didn't send me a sample as well. Then it would have been a really interesting episode.
Well, I'll just tell you that I have a trick that I'm not doing right now, where I live in Mexico, and I have a bottle of mezcal that actually has water in it. And occasionally, if I'm talking to people using, let's say, Zoom, I will pretend to be hammering the bottle of mezcal. So it tends to enliven the conversation. I'm not doing that right now. I apologize.
I love that. I actually realized I was so kind of engrossed in just chatting with you very informally that normally I take notes, or I take show notes. I start off with a blank piece of paper. There are no predetermined questions, but I'm definitely making a note at 19 minutes to go with the mezcal. I'll give you another tip back, if I may. It's definitely not as exciting as yours. But often when I've been rehearsing for a keynote speech or a pitch or presentation, not anymore, but walking through the streets of New York City, where it's perfectly normal, to talk to yourself anyway. But I always put in my AirPods or headphones, and I'll simulate, or it will look as if I'm on a conference call, but I'm actually talking to myself, articulating my pitch or my presentation. And it's really helped me to kind of be a better speaker and communicate better by rehearsing. And I always tell people the key is to articulate the words. The words must come out of your mouth. If you think them, they'll never come out the same way. And so that's my little tip. Not as exciting as yours. So cheers. I've got vodka in here.
Thank you.
All right, so let's stay on the morphing, on the changing, the changelings of people. You have another interesting story, which is how Nike and QR codes made you sell Citrus, your Portland ad agency, and so this is AI generated Mid-Journey. So we're using. I mean, listen, if I want to reinvent the talk show in this streaming era, I may as well use AI every way I can. I love this. I'll send you all the different images of you know, as a QR code. But tell us the story.
Well, so once upon a time, when I had my Portland agency, we had Nike as a client. We were very lucky that, and of course, almost every agency in Portland has a piece of Nike business, but we were very lucky to have recurring, you could call it, agency of record business, Major League Baseball and college sports. So we were very happy, very lucky. And I had another client who, not going to say invented QR codes, and I'm like 15 years ago, had QR codes. And my group came up with a brilliant idea, which is to take Nike boxes, the boxes that shoes come in and are taken into millions of households every year, and take these boxes that we dubbed dumb boxes because they did nothing. The shoes came in the box, then you wound up with a box of, a Nike box. Maybe you put it in your client, you put your baseball cards in it. Who the hell knows what you did with it, right? But you did nothing with it. So these guys, our tech client, invented embedding a QR code in a logo, okay, which today is, we all go, oh, yeah, that. But I'm talking 15 years ago. Anyway, we presented the idea to Nike, a brilliant presentation, dumb boxes, smart boxes. And I said to Nike, now you can turn your millions of boxes into a marketing tool that is in the house. I mean, it's in somebody's house, which is unbelievable, right? You're getting your marketing tool physically in their house. And people will click on this logo and they will open, let's say, a LeBron video, or you name it, anything Nike wanted. And I was confronted with stares and people going, oh, that's a nice idea. I don't think we're interested. Okay. And is anybody who has been in marketing or sales or insurance, it doesn't matter. You occasionally present people with an idea that they should buy because it seems to be a no-brainer. In this case, Nike didn't do it. And it reminded me of my career in marketing where I had in the past presented ideas. And look, I'm willing to understand that not every idea I present should be bought. This one should have been. And I just kind of internalized to myself, oh, this is, by the way, after I almost jumped across the table at the client, my account executive grabbed me. You can kind of visualize that moment. I realized that I was done, that I really didn't want to, unfortunately, I'll say this, cast pearls before swine. And when I say swine, Nike is as good as it gets in marketing. So Nike still has dumb boxes. I've moved on. They've moved on. They're doing quite well.
I think they're going to make it, but I'll tell you that I would have bought that idea. In fact, when I wrote my fourth book called Zero, which is, zero paid media is the new marketing model. The O in Zero stands for owned assets. Your people, your products, your packaging, your clothing, your trucks, your data, your customer service, your dumb boxes. What a great owned asset. Packaging, it still blows me away that we don't take advantage of packaging to surprise, delight, drop Easter eggs, interact, extend. Now in this world of augmented reality, you would imagine that there's even more possibility. But you know what? It is what it is. They come around decades after we leave this earth.
Well, and probably a good example of that, I started my career working with General Mills and boxes of breakfast cereal. And I don't know what's happened to the cereal market. People don't seem to want to eat cereal as much as they used to, maybe for good reason. But every one of those boxes especially anything aimed at children, unfortunately, had some gig on the back of the box, right? Or some information. The box was used as an information resource. So those days probably still exist. I'm not, like many people, I'm not buying boxes of cereal, but they got it right. The Post and General Mills got it right. And, I would suggest to people, when you're in the supermarket, go down the cereal aisle and just see what's on the back of these rather large packages.
I wonder, and I haven't even looked at a cereal box in 2023. I wonder what that looks like today.
Well, a nice journey for people, and I'm assuming they still do it, is something we used to call a store check, where you went and looked at your client's packaging and your client's competition. I suggest, a stroll, a calm, gentle stroll through a supermarket today, now that we can all go outside and breathe each other's air, might be a revealing look at the world. This doesn't happen when you order your groceries from Amazon, but take that stroll through the market.
Kind of thinking maybe your next book could be called A Calm, Gentle Stroll, a calm, gentle stroll through advertising, a calm.
Thank you, but no, thank you.
There's something about the calm and gentleness of it.
Right.
So speaking of calm and gentle, George Tannenbaum, who has been on the show, wrote this, and I just wanted to get your perspective as to my soliloquy, where I'm talking about, and I'm conceding, okay, there's definitely an element of jealousy, which is the only thing worse than being there is not being there, or maybe the only thing worse than not being there is being there. But and I will also concede that after the events of the last 3 years, anyone deserves the ability to be a little hedonistic, to let their head down, to be able to go and embrace the good old days, the bad old days, however you want to look at it. So there's got to be a little bit of wiggle room, but it also just seems like a bit of out of that the industry is out of touch. And so, George went and came up with 15 things we'll learn from Cannes and wish we hadn't. Like, for example, all the lion trophies are male. Why are there no lionesses? No matter who you are, there's no real reason to wear sunglasses at night, ever. There's no correlation between lions awarded and the crappy commercials we see on TV. I guess that's been the same. Humor works, especially the kind that's not funny. Thought leaders aren't leading us anywhere thoughtful. That's because I wasn't there. Only about 12% of attendees have ever created an ad. Here's an Ogilvy one. No one in the world knows what borderless creativity means, no matter how often Ogilvy repeats it. And who needs a defibrillator? We can beat our own chests. I guess we will just read 2 more. So what our agency's revenue is down 22%. We won agency of the year. Agencies won't pay for taxis for employees, but we will charter yachts for executives. And next year, AI will replace Rosé. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you respond to the snarky and cynical Joseph Jaffe and George Tannenbaum?
Well, I've never been there. That was always where our creative teams went, especially when I worked at Saatchi in London. They would voyage over to the south of France, and why not? So I'll do the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is it's an opportunity for people to go on vacation. So that's number one. Number two, on the good side, it might be a good opportunity to network and meet, let's hope, potential clients or your next employer, or meet someone who you have a micro love affair with, certainly people that you drink heavily with. So that's a good thing, right? The bad is, what's the point? I'm not sure. Do we really need a party from Netflix to let us know that Netflix is about to accept, or is in fact accepting advertising? I think I heard that somewhere. So there are probably lots of reasons that it might make sense. I think it's nice that we can be reminded that ideas matter in marketing, and it's not just analytics and programmatic and so forth. I wonder, frankly, how many techie types go to this kind of an event, or if it's really, just a reflection of the past. On the ugly side, I agree with you. I mean, why spend this money? We're dealing, unfortunately, in the advertising industry with a low margin business. I grew up in the 15% commission. If a client spent 100 million, we generated $15 million in revenue, and we probably spent 3 to 4 million in terms of managing the business. So why are companies spending the money today? I guess it's to reward people to hopefully meet new clients and business, and I don't know, have a good time and get drunk.
So I always try and find a quote for my guest, and this is the one that I came up with for you. It's by Charles James. Bonfire of the Vanities. The lesson of that book is never start believing your own press, which I think is a lesson in there's hubris, there's arrogance. What is the press saying right now? I mean, the press, in many respects, I've decided to spend a lot of my time on Web3. It has been lambasted and chastised, first loved by the journalists, then hated by the journalists, then ridiculed. Was listening to that Gandhi quote: first they laugh at you, then they ignore you, then they fight you, then we win. And now everyone's just chasing the bright and shiny object of generative AI. What is the epitaph going to say about advertising? Here lies advertising. ... How would you complete that?
Well, it often comes down to what the definition is of advertising. And so I wrote, as you know, a book called, and I sometimes wonder if this is the right title, How to Build a Kick-Ass Advertising Agency. And in the first or second chapter, I asked the question, what does the industry call itself? Some people do not like the term advertising agency anymore. They like marketing agency or digital agency or SEO agency, or today, artificial intelligence agencies. I'm sure there's multiple agencies that are now saying they're specialists in AI. So really, I don't want to be too pedantic here, but the question is, what is advertising? So to me, advertising is somehow paying some money to get people to pay attention to a message that you've crafted that will help you sell stuff. So to me, advertising is about selling stuff, right? And is it dying? I don't think so. Is it morphing? Of course. Are companies spending less money because they think that I'll build a community and everybody will love me? We're dealing in some fantasy. I mean, the reality is twofold. One is, on one side, people are smart enough to know how to search. I'm going to New York. I want to figure out where to eat sushi. I use TikTok and YouTube, and people show up and say, this is where you eat sushi. I'm not seeing ads for sushi restaurants, and that might be a bit narrow. I don't see, although I like the ads coming out of Wieden Kennedy for Old Spice, I'm not sure that they make me want to buy Old Spice so that I smell good. Advertising is, unfortunately, for financial reasons, a little bit in a death spiral. But good advertising that I see, and I don't see most of it, does work. Marketing works sometimes.
Yeah, you see, your little get out of jail free card there was sometimes. When I wrote Life After the 30-Second Spot, I actually said, the question is not, does it work? The question is, how well does it work? And what is the stuff that doesn't work doing to the stuff that does work? So the wastage.
50. Let's just remember that's at least 50%.
At least
we don't know which 50%, as they say, right?
Or, and something that I wrote as well, is what if we didn't know, and what if it was way more than 50%? It's funny. Lee Clow says the problem is not advertising; it's bad advertising, and I disagree with him wholeheartedly, if I may, respectfully. The problem is not bad advertising. The problem is advertising. The problem is the fact that who determines what is bad advertising? It's not enough just to say, well, we create the good advertising, we create the great advertising. It's not our fault. It's not our problem. It's not our responsibility. It's all of yours. You bottom feeders, you parasites, you leeches, you direct marketers. I mean, we're all in this kind of quicksand or quagmire together. How do we fix it? That's the billion-dollar question.
Well, one of the ways to fix it is have the industry actually be have a decent margin. And again, I'll just go back. Once upon a time, advertising was a fantastic margin. We all drank red wine at lunch. We wore nice suits. Although, I look back and I'm wondering, how did I wear a tie for 30 years? Somehow I managed that. Today, it's much more difficult. And we think, and actually, I'll tell you a little, if you don't mind, I'll tell you a quickie story. Today, in theory, we measure everything. So I'll tell us really quickly. When I left advertising, I went to work for Advanced Publications, which is newspapers, Random House, et cetera, huge family corporation. And they asked me to put newspapers online. This was in the 90s. So we're inventing, how do you put newspapers online? And after we got our act together, figuring out what advertising looks like, this is like 96, 97, what is online advertising? I went to the Alan Banks, who ran media at Saatchi & Saatchi. So this guy controlled hundreds of millions of dollars. I said, Alan, great news. We can now determine who is looking at ads, who isn't, and are they clicking through to buy something? And he looked at me and he said, I think I can say this word on your show. He said, why the fuck would I want to do that? He said, that will kill us if we figure out who isn't looking at our stuff, right? And I left the meeting going, gee, I thought I was into something really cool here, internet, digital, web advertising. And this guy's saying, I don't know if that's going to work for the industry. So in hindsight, you and I could probably say this because we've been around for a while. I'm not sure all of that worked for the business.
We actually have a 2-minute delay here for all swear words.
Uh-oh.
So it only works 2 minutes later. So listen, this show started with Tom Arnold. So you're in good hands. You're in good hands.
You.
Now, let's analyze that statement for a second, because you could look at it one way and actually say, the emperor has no clothes, the genie is out the bottle, the curtain has been opened, and instead of this all-powerful Oz, there is a 4'5" old and balding white male pulling the levers. And but on the flip side, there is something about the magic and about the fact that when you analysis paralysis, when you over analyze, when you dissect something that maybe is undissectable, you lose the magic. And being able to reduce this entire profession from art to science is basically just going from the frying pan into the fire. I hate to be the purveyor of balance and equilibrium, but I'm okay with both art and science. What I fear is that we've gone so far into the realm of science supposedly, that we've lost that art, that creativity.
Well, this is, the great debate, isn't it? I think, you pointed out something earlier. If you go to the Lion, whatever it's called, website, and you look and see what's won, then ask yourself the question, has anybody seen these pieces of art, advertising art, right? Have they seen it? You, me, other people, I track, unfortunately, and I want to control myself, which is hard to do. I post on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter on LinkedIn. I look at the numbers and I try to understand, why am I not getting more traction on one day and why am I getting traction on another day? And I ultimately don't think I'm smart enough to figure all of that out. You would think so, because the SEO guys say go to the keyword research website and you'll figure out what people want. And, okay, fine. right? Answer the Public is a really great site. I don't know if most people may not be aware of it. Maybe they are. It congregates, it lists, I don't know what the right word is, how people search on a term on Google. Okay. And fine. I just don't have the time, energy, desire to, rack my brain to try to figure out what I should address in terms of what's working. But I'll go back to your statement. Fabulous stuff are winning awards. Has anybody seen it? I mean, that's really one of the bottom line issues with advertising. Are people seeing our messaging? Yes, you can target me, but come on, give me a break.
Fundamentally, it really comes down to two things. One of them, as you alluded to, is compensation. And the other one is kind of risk-taking, which is creativity. In other words, why is it that the best advertising is not being seen? Which really comes down to risk, to the fact that when you try and be all things to all people, you end up being nothing to nobody. And the second component is compensation. The good old days of advertising, which people seem to want to shun and almost strike out because for obvious reasons and for legitimate reasons. But one thing about them, tie or no tie, was the fact that people actually felt that they were in a creative business and they acted as such. I remember when I came to Ogilvy in 1997, when I came to the US, I remember saying the account executives here are more like accountant executives. I was the only one dressed in orange or green or wearing a tie. I felt like advertising. You got to dress the part. Otherwise, if you don't have that mindset in terms of how you wear yourself, how are you expected to generate that creativity?
Well, it's hard to dress to be creative, although I certainly had a few, mostly again in London, people had figured out how, and actually might be a side subject here, how to use what you wore as personal branding, right? And again, so I go to London and they're wearing Savile Row suits and fabulous ties and shirts, and they looked much better than my New York colleagues. But the way they looked, and let's use Charles Saatchi, which unfortunately most people probably don't remember that he, Morris and Charles started the original Saatchi and Saatchi advertising, which has nothing to do with what the agency is today. Those guys wore black and white. And when you went to their advertising agency office, it was all black and white. It was, incredible. And that was about branding. So, if you wore orange when you went to Ogilvy in New York, obviously, plus you had that weird accent that no one can figure out. Is it Australian or British or New Zealand?
Not really sure. I say Staten Island, but could be wrong.
Right. But that was for you, your accent and your orange were part of your personal brand. So, I think, I don't know where I'm going with this other than, how you look and act are in fact part of a personal brand.
No,
and,
I know exactly. I know exactly where you're going. Where you're going is, Diane Arbus, the photographer, who said, it's what I've never seen before that I recognize. The only way to stand out is to be different. And yet fundamentally what we're doing with our advertising, with our communications, is trying to be mean or median or middle of the road and please everyone. And what happens is we don't. It's why if I had to just pick out a brand, United Colors of Benetton was able to do what it did by standing up, standing out, and standing for something.
Yes. Well, it's, that's an example. Maybe your listenership or your viewership here should go backwards in time and look at that work, especially the print work from that brand. I think the general consensus agrees that the best ever, this is ridiculous in a sense, best ever television commercial was the 1984 spot for Apple introducing the Macintosh. Now, why did that work? It worked because, by the way, you mentioned Lee Clow earlier, so he had a lot to do with that, which is nice. And that was Chiat Day for again the fans that don't remember what that agency was. It took the client, Steve Jobs, to say, give me something different. And of course, he had a campaign ultimately all about being different. It took a really creative shop to come up with the idea. It took desire on the part of the board of directors of Apple to, I'm not sure how many $1 million that cost, but it cost a lot. It ran one time on the Super Bowl, which meant it was seen by people, and it launched a brand. Okay. So that was certainly different. I can't remember that the whole Be Different, Act Different campaign from Nike. I'm sorry, from Apple was Think Different was brilliant. And I think those are two words that should speak to everybody today that wants to create something different and better, and that is Think Different. Most people don't. I think there's a fear on the part of CMOs, chief marketing officers, because I think the tenure is 3 to 4 years for a CMO. Oh shit. Can I say that word? I don't know what words I can say anymore on the S word.
At this point, we're too far gone. So,
all right. I want to here. I'm gonna let me just flip the subject for a second. I spoke to a group of people last week. Women's Presidents Association, fantastic group. I should speak to them more often. They're much more interesting than most groups that I've ever talked to. Very, very smart people. And I was a little bit, maybe not surprised, but they cursed better than most organizations I've ever spoken with. So I appreciated them. It was punctuation for the points they were making. But to go back to this point, acting different and not trying to be universal and not being milquetoast, whatever that, I never knew what that actually meant, is a good idea.
Well, you actually said acting different as opposed to thinking different, which is important.
That's, wearing your orange and faking your South African accent worked for you.
I mean, it sounds like it sounds like one of my favorite scenes from any movie, Young Frankenstein. That's Frankenstein. When the late Marty Feldman says, "Master, shall I take the bags to the castle?" And Gene Wilder says, Igor, it's Igor. Igor, why are you speaking like that? He goes, "I don't know, Governor. I thought you liked it when I speak that way." Who knows? There's so many voices inside my head.
Well, here, let me speak. You look at a lot of podcasts. You're on Zoom calls. You're on whatever tool we use, and I'm always fascinated with the backgrounds that people choose. All right, so I'm pointing this out because I'm pointing out that I am no different, better than anybody else. Over here is the ubiquitous last book you wrote, and then I also laugh at the ubiquitous awards that are up here. I won one show and I won an FE kind of deal. I also am a New Yorker. So the backgrounds people choose, and we all know Zoom allows you to create a fake background, so that's fun. But the backgrounds are also, I'll go back to try to make this all make sense. It is in fact personal branding. So if I were to study what you choose to put on the shelves behind you is in our day of digital meetings is quite important, and it actually doesn't get discussed much. I know I'm all over the place. It's my nature.
No, it's great. And actually, I'll go full screen for a moment. Give you a little bit more. There's a lot going on there. In fact, if you look at the skull, there's a beautiful story. Part of it is that every single time, if my guest is interested in a story, I'll tell them a story. Part of the time as well, in reinventing the talk show. So the way I position this is the Daily Show for business meets Wayne's World. So I don't want to be in a studio. I never want to be in a studio. I want to be, the one-man band with the cymbals and the harmonica and etc. But I also want to do over time little Easter eggs. So things that if people find or see, they can win, they can get access, they can, etc. But that skull, when I wrote Life After the 30-Second Spot, I was asked to moderate a panel on TV, on the future of TV, during Advertising Week in New York. Now, at this point, this was the biggest, most visible and high-profile engagement I'd ever had in my life. And my panelists were all the heads of sales at ABC, CBS, NBC. I mean, they were the enemy, basically, or viewed me as the enemy. And so I got that skull. It's not a real skull. And I started off and I walked across the stage before the panelists even came up. And I said, TV or not TV? Is that the question? And I had that as my prop. And that skull, so everything tells a story. That's my story.
Well, we like props, and actually, that kind of reminds me of being a little bit too early. Again, when I put newspapers online many years ago, I was asked to speak at the Radio Advertising Bureau in New York. So I'm in this conference room with a bunch of radio people, and again, this is late '90s, and I said, "You guys are all screwed." By the way, notice I'm using a word that you don't have to scrub out. I said, you guys, it's going to end for you. Now, I was a little early, but I think that I'm not sure who listens to radio anymore.
Apparently, Lizzo does, because she's performing for iHeartRadio, iHeart Media at Cannes. So,
well, iHeart's kind of morphed, haven't they? They're a bit. I'm not. In my car, I'm not listening to a lot of terrestrial radio these days.
I'm not really sure how they've morphed, but they've apparently morphed to embrace some of the streams and the streamy type of things.
Right.
I want to, in the time that we have left, talk a little bit about humor or the lack thereof. It was interesting. I had Robin DiAngelo, Dr. Robin DiAngelo, on my show, who wrote White Fragility, and we had a conversation about comedy. And she basically said that comedy inherently was racist. And I basically said, but what happens to comedy when there is no more? We're not sure where the line is anymore. It seems like we can't cross any lines because those lines are kind of closing in on us. And then you went and something that you wanted to talk to. I mean, here's one of the examples with Adweek, but you ask a very interesting and an important question, which is, why is there so little humor these days? So I'm not sure if you want to be, do you want to take this or tackle this from the perspective of in life in general, or just within advertising in terms of the actual work product that we're seeing or witnessing? And here's one example. Small agency working out of coffee shop shuts down early due to lack of available electrical outlets. Yeah, it's happened to me. The struggle is real, Peter.
Well, this is, to be clear with your viewership, this is Adweek, WEAK. And I found that I'm not alone. They have 100,000 followers between Twitter and LinkedIn, if not more. I'm sure they're probably sitting there going, "It's 8 million." They speak truth to the advertising industry. Their stuff is very, very humorous. So I always point them out. And they built an agency based on humor. Once upon a time, and I don't know why I didn't do this, because in hindsight, thought it was brilliant. I was going to open up our agency website. And as you know, 99% of agency websites of almost any business's websites look and feel like the competition. There's hardly any differential between A and B and C. I wanted to open up with a stand-up comedian, riffing on jokes about advertising and advertising agencies. Now, why I didn't do that, who knows? But what we're not seeing anymore is the kind of humor that we used to see in marketing. And I think part of it is, again, fear on the part of the CMO. They don't want to look and be too different. No one seems to ever want to think of their business or their product or their service in a funny way. Self-deprecation is certainly not part of the equation these days. And there's fear. I think it's the fear factor. And maybe there just aren't any funny people left in the business. I mean, where did they go? If a business is going to be run by a programmatic media expert, they're generally not the funniest people in the room.
Yeah, I mean, even if you ask Siri to tell you a joke, it's not necessarily that funny. But this is why I always carry a laugh track with me wherever I go, because at least I can laugh at myself. And anyway, self-deprecation is one of my core values.
Well, it's easy. I just want to say it's easy for you.
What, to laugh at myself?
Well, to be, I mean, there's so much subject matter for you to deprecate.
You just need a soundboard. But you know, Peter, I mean, like ultimately what it does come down to, and you've kind of connected the dots beautifully, albeit inadvertently, which is risk, right? We're so afraid of being wrong. We're so afraid of being called out. We're afraid to take a risk. I don't know this for a fact. I just know it's true, as Bill Maher would say. But Apple's 1984 commercial almost never happened. I think it was killed. I think either Jobs or someone within Apple wanted to kill it. And so when you are on the stroke of whether you want to call it genius or breakthrough or something that can move a mountain, there has to be that element of risk. It's almost like if you don't feel the fear, if you don't fear the risk or feel the risk, then you know you're not at that edge, whether it's a leading or a bleeding edge. And so I think it comes down to that from a comedic standpoint, is we're so afraid of the consequences that we're afraid to take the risk.
Yes. How's that for, I'll just agree with you. I think, here's something I point people to just because it's a fabulous piece of film or video, and it's also about an incredible subject. There's a documentary about Robin Williams that maybe I saw it on Netflix, who knows, on one of the networks. This guy was all about risk. He was a genius. Every time he got on stage, it was completely different than the last one. There was no set of jokes. Robin Williams was constantly about risk and risk as entertainment. So maybe I'll suggest to the creative directors out there that they pay more attention to a Robin Williams. We have others. George Carlin was all about risk, right? He totally controversial, and that's how he got famous. Most comedians are fearful of that these days. And now I'm talking about people that aim to be humorous. I could be probably beaten back on this because many of us will watch stand-up online now and see a lot of it. But the best seem to be the people that take a risk. And yes, you're agreeing with me. I'll go backwards and agree with you agreeing with me, which is always a fun thing to do. Yeah, there's very little risk anymore. And part of the risk is we're just too analytical. The numbers probably don't support risk.
Yeah, I completely disagree, though, with you on that one, by the way. No,
All
I'm
right.
kidding. If I agree with your agreement of my agreement, is it possible to disagree? I have to read these ones as well because it actually feels probably not coincidentally like The Onion. Agency just listing anything they can think. Wait, agency just listing anything they think of on capability slide for new business pitch. Wait, I don't get that one. Agency just listing anything they can think of. I didn't get that one, but I love the VLMYNR considers adding another couple letters to name. That's absolutely brilliant. And then, closer to home, I mean, George is speaking about it. Now Adweek is speaking about it. Agency staffers still have no idea what recently hired thought leader actually does. I'm a thought leader, and now I'm like being ostracized and targeted and attacked. But one of the things you write about in your book is actually a superpower of delivering unignorable thought leadership. So bring us home in the few moments we have left, given the fact that Adweek and George Tannenbaum are gunning for us thought leaders. How do you deliver unignorable thought leadership?
Well, you start with being wanting to be unignorable as an objective. And one of the things I say to my agency clients is think of the alternative. The alternative, of course, is to be ignorable. And I want to point out that I stole this idea from an agency in Canada called John Street, just ST period. And if you go to their YouTube channel and their best, I'm not going to say their best work, but they really hammered it a few years ago. They have one video, and I might get the numbers completely wrong, called Catvertising. And this was a video they did for themselves to market their own agency. It has over 1 million views. No other agency has ever put video up on YouTube that has over 1 million views. And if you add up all of their views for all of their crazy videos that they did to promote their agency and their idea, which they say to clients is be unignorable, hire us to make you unignorable. They were so good at it and got so many views that they were acquired, I believe, for many reasons by WPP. So if you're an agency and you'd like to bail out, and I'm going to say that 30% would like to do that, try to be unignorable, because otherwise you look like all the guys down the street. But it's an objective.
You know, I actually found Cat GPT, by the way, as opposed to Chat GPT, where every single response is meow, 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 meow in different iterations.
Are you? I know you're not famous. Are you unignorable?
Am I unignorable? As I think about that, we will just segue to Chuck Norris and ending it. Honestly, I think that I probably was more unignorable when I was younger, when I was more provocative, when I was more controversial. Now I'm maybe a little bit more ignorable because I'm trying to. I'm just trying to do my thing. I'm not trying too hard, I suppose. Maybe I need to try harder. Maybe I'm not unignorable enough, is my honest answer to you.
Well, I don't charge a lot, so if you ever need some guidance, just give me a shout.
Deal. I mean, wait till you get the invoice for being on my show.
Right. I'm going to say something fast because I think for me it's important. One of the reasons I pointed to Adweek, ADWEAK, is I actually paid them money to promote my book to their 100,000+ readership. So I want to point out that not only do I say humor works, but I've paid to be part of their humor. All right. So one thing you can do to be unignorable is actually, I'll end with this thought, use advertising.
Right. Brilliant. We end up actually using that blunt tool that we hit everyone over the head with, that we try and interrupt them in their living rooms, and actually use it as it was intended to be used, to be able to make David Ogilvy roll less in his grave. Advertising agencies are often the worst at advertising themselves. But here we are, and you've met now John Street. I'm going to be looking them up as soon as possible and finding out more. Mr. Peter Levitan, a legend in his own time. Joseph Jaffe, a legend in his own mind. And you see, that was me. Don't take my punchline. This is his website, peterlevitan.com. Thinking of starting a podcast, don't. Look, I mean, you're just going to have to go and spend hours going down the rabbit hole of Levitan. If you want to find out more about him, connect with him, start off besides peterlevitan.com. You can do a bunch of other things like follow him on the Twitter, on LinkedIn, and try and help him discover why sometimes people care and sometimes they don't. Find out or follow him on Instagram. Buy the book, damn it, How to Build a Kick-Ass Advertising Agency. I'm on a mission now to tell people, buy every damn book in the world, because for $20, you are not even scratching the surface of what this poor schmuck has done to pour their entire life into this 150 to 200 page tome. And there is at least one nugget that can transform your entire godforsaken, miserable life. Buy the damn book. Sorry, I just had to get that off my chest. peterlevitan.com. Subscribe to his newsletter. Peter, there is nothing more to say. This is 1 hour of your time you will never get back. But don't worry, because Chuck Norris still approves.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.